because this video right here went viral when you did your work with Dr. Henry Abramson. Dr. Henry Abramson, Black Jews, their place in history.
Yeah.
A conversation with Nassim Black and Henry Abramson. And just some good information for you. I know Nassim Black. We both grew up in the same part of Seattle, Washington, South Seattle, Washington. I went to Rainier Beach High School. We ran with some of the same gangs, if you will. So shout out Nassim Black. All praise to the Most High. But yeah, this video went semi-viral, and a lot of the Israelite community watched this and did responses and commentaries on this video right here, where you actually had Dr. Abramson on with you. So which tribes? I know we spoke about the Limba, the Igbo, Yoruba, Beta Israel. So these are all African tribes, and that's not all of them, but these are just some of the main ones.
The popular ones.
Right, the popular ones. Which one of those tribes would you say most Black Americans come from? Igbo. Okay.
Yeah.
So y'all heard it. And this isn't just our Rabbi Mordecai brother. PhD scholars agree with this.
The rabbis here in Israel, Ashkenaz rabbi, one of our greatest rabbis, Rabbi Chaim Kanetsky, they made a ruling here in Israel that the Igbos are Jews. They made a ruling on that. You know what I mean? So it's not like my own personal thing or Chief Rabbi Pinchas said it. This is something that's acknowledged. Now, the dynamic between them and the African-American community, that has to be researched and brought out because it's been like really concealed from the African-American community.
Right. Okay. So I will say this. I've heard this thing as well from Dr. Henry Abramson and then PhD Dr. Michael Brown. So you said that there's a official rabbi of Ashkenazim who declared that
one of the biggest in our generation, the two biggest rabbis in our generation here in Israel. One was Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, and he made the ruling, and he's a Sephardic rabbi. He made a ruling on the Ethiopian, the Beta Israel, and that's why they were able to come to Israel. And then the other rabbi, who's Ashkenaz, Rabbi Chaim Kanetsky in blessed memory, both in blessed memory, made a ruling on the Igbos, and that's
that they're bloodline Israelites.
Yeah, the Jews, they're Israelites.
Okay, and for the record, everybody, according to the statistics, most Black Americans come from Igbo. Not all, but most come from Igbo. So what would that make y'all? According to history, archaeology, and prophecy from Israelites, from secular, that would make y'all bloodline Israelites. But as far as who got it the worst and continuously until this day, it's not negating who you may believe to be Israel, but as far as the curses of Deuteronomy 28, the Black experience to this day, would you say the curses are affecting them more so than other people groups that claim to be descendants of Israel?
I would say African Americans have definitely suffered a tremendous point. But the thing is, it's like when you look at like the idea of like just using the term colonialization, right? When you look at the world over the last 1,000 years, just the last 1,000, not just 2,000, just the last 1,000, most people on planet Earth have been conquered and renamed, right? Most people. But the last group of people that we could say that really experienced this was the African American, right?
All right, we are here with Rabbi Mordecai, Yosef ben Avraham. Hopefully I'm saying that right. He can give a proper pronunciation if I'm not. Peace and blessings to everybody who is going to be watching this. This is TGC Ministries, the Genesis Congregation. I am your host, Priest Sakah, and we're about to talk about African tribes who are bloodline Israelites and how that translates to the Black people in the Americas. What's going on, brother? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Rabbi Mordecai, originally from Mordecai Yosef, but I'm originally from Los Angeles, California. And now I'm living in Jerusalem, in the old city of Jerusalem.
Okay. And just a couple questions before we get into it. Before you started practicing Judaism, did you feel like you were a bloodline Israelite, or did you just want to gravitate towards who you believe to be the Israelites?
I grew up, my parents were Muslim, or are Muslim. And so we grew up, and then their parents were Christian. And so my grandmother, in blessed memory, Marie Reinhardt, she used to, tell me when she was alive, when we were younger, that, that we're descendants of Israelites type of thing. But it really didn't have any like impact on me per se. It wasn't like such an idea. But when I came to Israel in 2016, I was learning in learning institutions here. And I guess maybe like 4 years into it, by then I've already converted to Judaism in Los Angeles, and I came to Israel learning some institutions. And so I met a lot of different types of Jews, and I met a lot of African Jews, and a lot of them, one of which was who's now the chief rabbi of Africa, Chief Rabbi Pinchas Eliyahu, and he used to have a learning institution actually where I'm at now, like the city. I'm in the old city of Jerusalem, and he's from Congo, but grew up in France. Anyways, he was doing a lot of outreach programs with Jews in Africa. And when I met him through another rabbi who's actually Haitian, Rabbi Zohar Mars, and he was one of his students. And I just knew Zohar just from Jerusalem. You know, a lot of people who are Black like know each other, type of a thing. Americans in general know each other pretty good here in Jerusalem. And so he introduced me to Chief Rabbi Pinchas, and that's when I learned about like the different tribes in Africa. And, you know, because he has the Jewish Federation of Africa, and basically what their mission is to give support to a lot of the different Israelite tribes throughout the region.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the groups of tribes that I learned about and actually became in contact with and eventually like give classes to, and even to this day, are a lot of the Igbos in Nigeria, on the west of Nigeria. And they told me that their descendants were sold in the transatlantic slave trade, and most of them ended up in North America. And they make a distinction between it because there's many people who were in a transatlantic slave trade, but the high majority of them went to places like Brazil,
mm-hmm.
in places in that area. But those were different tribes. A lot of them were not Igbos. A lot of them were like there's different tribes. They're
Ashanti, Yoruba, Iwe.
Aruba. I think Aruba. Wait, what's the most popular? Who has the most power in Nigeria right now?
It's the oh my
goodness. Hausa are mostly Muslims. They're in the north, and then you have Yoruba.
Let me see.
So a lot of the Yorubas ended up in Brazil and these types of places, and the Igbos specifically came to the North Americas. And there's a lot of documentation about it too. And so that's where a lot of the oral tradition that African Americans have of being connected to the Israelites. A lot of people saw it as kind of like, oh, well, they kind of like were looking for, you know, hope or meaning, you know, in terms of their identity, being slaves in America. But it was literally an oral tradition that they had. And I think the earliest institutions that were created around this idea were like 150 years ago. And then later you had like the commandment keepers with Rabbi Matthews, Rabbi Levy, Rabbi Ford, and these type of things. But
and that's how we get One West. Well, not necessarily, but I do know Abba Bivens, who created One West, which will be the Israelite camps that are on the streets now. Abba Bivens was a part of the commandment keepers. He branched off, and then he started One West, which that's how you get the Israelite camps today.
And actually, Abba Bivens, a lot of his descendants live here in Israel. And they're like religious Orthodox Jews like myself. I don't know them so well, but I had a friend of mine who went to yeshiva with me here in Jerusalem. His name was Kazriel, and he's like from Atlanta. And he was, you know, from a Hebrew Israelite background type of a thing. Anyway, so it's in Abba Bivens' kids, they're all friends here or whatever. And I didn't really know so much about him. Like he just would tell me the story. Like this was like more than like 7 years ago now. And so there's definitely a connection, and there's definitely was activity with African Americans in this pursuit of, you know, and you even have like all the way today, I have Rabbi Casper Fournier, who's a good friend, and he's the head of the Israelite Board of Rabbis, and he's also on the board of the New York Board of Rabbis. He's a conservative rabbi, so we're different in that way. Mm-hmm. But I spent time with him. We did interviews, type of a thing together.
Do you teach in the synagogues in Jerusalem?
Yeah, I did. Teaching yeshivas here and everything. Yeah.
Okay, so the most I want to pull this up real quick because this video right here went viral when you did your work with Dr. Henry Abramson. Dr. Henry Abramson, Black Jews, their place in history.
Yeah.
A conversation with Nassim Black and Henry Abramson. And just some good information for you. I know Nassim Black. We both grew up in the same part of Seattle, Washington, South Seattle, Washington. I went to Rainier Beach High School. We ran with some of the same gangs, if you will. So shout out Nassim Black. All praise to the Most High. But yeah, this video went semi-viral. And a lot of the Israelite community watched this and did responses and commentaries on this video right here, where you actually had Dr. Abramson on
Can you
with you.
be a travel advisor with?
How many views is that now?
It's at 151,000 views
Hmm.
right now. So yeah, that's good. So I wanted to ask, working with Dr. Henry Abramson and his knowledge of, you know, the African tribes and the Black diaspora of Israelites, what would you say are the most, which tribes would be the most associated with being bloodline Israelites? It could be East Africa, West Africa, North Africa, South Africa. Which tribes, according to your knowledge, will be mostly associated with the most evidence that they are in fact bloodline Israelites and not Hamites?
Yeah. So just on the Dr. Henry Abramson's interview, first of all, he's a great person, and he really brought a lot of points out, because a lot of that conversation, I don't know, was like such a historical conversation as it was like, in a way, like current events in a lot of ways. But one of the things that he said I thought was very interesting, because at the time I had a book that I had coming out called Tech Support for the Soul. But Dr. Henry Abramson told me that in all of his academic research, he couldn't find any papers in academia written about Black Jews, or religious. But it was like a mystery concept. Like it didn't exist, just completely. And we just talked about 150 years, right? So there's been no academic recording of it in academia, and that made me change my book from Tech Support to the Soul, from Mind of the Black Jew, right? And so that was like a big part. That was like a big shift for me, because I was like, man, that's crazy, because it's like a big part of our history, just like, the Nation of Islam and the Black Church, African Americans and their connection to that's a big source. And so the impetus of him wanting to do that interview and that whole situation was trying to bring content around that. And a lot of the people who were in that audience, because that was a webinar, right? And so most of the people, it sold out in I think it was I don't know how many people, maybe 1,700. I don't know how many people.
That shows you that people want to know who the lost tribes are, for sure. People want to know who the lost tribes are. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, but I was going to say, but most of the people that were there were academics. There were most of the people who signed up because that was his database, right? It wasn't like a consumer database. It was just colleague. And so it was people from around the world that were just like, oh, wow, we have no information about this. And so they signed up. So that was a big turning point for me.
I want to say this too. The fact that there's a lack of academic support and evidentiary support that certain Black people, not all, and certain African tribes are bloodline Israelites, I believe that's part of the prophecy, because the prophecy does say that the Israelites will be stripped of their identity, their nationality, called proverbs and bywords. So that is an attestation to the prophecy. I want to ask you this question: what is the relevance of us even embarking on this journey to unearth, the lost tribes of Israel? What is the relevance of it?
I would say for myself, my personal journey was coming from a background of Islam and these type of things, and my parents went to Sufism, these type of things. For me, it was really about a direct connection to God, right? And it allowed me to define myself from the frame of the 613, commandments, that we have in the Torah that we understand. And I think, as African Americans, we've never really had an opportunity to define ourselves, through Christianity. It was it came through the plantation, and it was, they justify killing and lynching of Black people at the same time wanting us to worship that, right? And then you have, the Islam came, and it was also it was Middle Eastern, Arab, and we had to change our names and fit into that. And so for me, the idea of the Torah was a direct connection. This is before I knew anything about, the tribes and all this type of stuff. It was just oh, okay, well, I could just talk to God directly, and I could define myself, based around, the commandments of the Torah, who am I, right? And I think the biggest concept, we just had the holiday Hanukkah, right? And so what is the concept with Hanukkah? The concept is that the Jews were, Israelites were fighting against, they were fighting against the Greeks, right? And what was the issue with the Greeks? The Greeks' philosophical approach to life was around externalities, right? The body, the physique, the intellect, and that's how they gauged the value of a man. As were the Jews, their argument was like, no, we are souls that come into a body, and the reality that we come into is there to invoke us and to challenge us for ultimately a correction for the soul that after a period of time will allow us to reconnect. Now, the thing is, America is built off of like Greek, Roman, thinking, right? And so America is built off of that, right? We refer to it as the thinking of Aesop, right? And so that thinking process that they have is built around externalities, even in America, right? And so America wants to convince me that I'm an ethnicity, that I'm a race, and they created all these systems of, engagement of who I am based off of this matrix that they created. But then the Torah and the wisdom of the sages say the opposite. It's like, no, I'm a soul that came into a particular body, into a set of certain conditions for me to transcend through the Torah, through the keeping of the commandments, through keeping this having a relationship with the creator of the universe. So for me, it was like being able to push away the narrative of the world and then now attach myself to the narrative of God. And so that I think, all human beings, should have that, at least some type of connection to that. And for sure, African Americans, have had a brutal experience in America through, the Greek Roman philosophical approach, and we were put at the bottom, right? And but it's not true. It's not reality, right? And in fact, the greatness of my ancestry comes from the fact that the souls that came into those bodies and came through that experience were chosen by God because they have this supernatural ability to transcend, and not only that, be an example for the whole world, right? So
Wow.
that
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because I got two things to say. One, you said that, we had nothing, they stripped us, and then they made us conform to Christianity by the sword. It wasn't because Christianity was some good religion, peaceful, pious religion. They made us conform by the sword. It's called forced conversion. Now, Christianity, I want to say this, and I'm going to land back off of what you last said. Christianity will allow Samoans to take ethnic pride and have racial identity, but still be fervent Christians. They'll allow Filipinos, Ethiopians to still fly their flag, keep their language, culture, and food, and have their ethnic pride and racial empowerment and still be fervent, hardcore Christians, diehard Christians. But when the American black man says, "Oh, I want to figure out who I am, what's my identity, what's my ethnicity, what's my nationality, and still be a Christian," then Christianity wants to say, we're all one in Christ. It doesn't matter who you are. Don't research your history. Don't. Now you're trying to like put race over religion. No, everybody else gets to, support have ethnic pride and racial empowerment, like I said. But when the black American man does it and wants to be a Christian, they're now trying to bring some type of racism into the Christian religion, because I believe it's all by design that they want to continue to, hide and suppress who we truly are, that being most of us being bloodline Israelites. And you said something, you said for us to be able to transcend being the chosen souls of God to be examples to the whole world. That was when I asked you that question, what is the relevance of us being Israelites and finding out who we are? That was the exact answer from the Bible that came to my mind. So I want to read this to you, and you could also talk about it as well. Deuteronomy 4:6. So it's telling us to keep the Torah, and it says, "For this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations." So the nations are supposed to see us exuding God's morality and exemplifying and displaying these laws, statutes, and commandments as our wisdom. These nations see that, and it says, "Which shall hear all of these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people." Verse 7 says, "For what nation is there so great, who hath God so near to them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for?" And then I also want to get Isaiah 49:6. And he said, "It is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant." It's interchangeable with the Messiah and Israel here. "To raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou should be my salvation unto the ends of the earth." Our job, our plan is to keep God's Torah and his moral compass so that the nations can see that this is a wise and a people of understanding, and that is a light to the nations. And also lastly, and then you could expound on this. If you don't know who the Israelites are, the relevance is that if you bless them, Genesis 12:3, I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse you. So if you don't know who the true Israelites are, you could be cursing them, and that could bring curses on you. And you could be blessing them, and that could bring blessings on you. So I just wanted to just highlight those, just kind of land back and then supporting what you're saying about what the relevance is to, going deep into who the African tribes are that are Israelites, the ones that came over to the Americas, how that translates to the Black experience and who the Black Americans are today. But what have you to say on those few
Yeah.
scriptures?
Well, the thing is, and I mean, maybe we agree or disagree on this point, but if we can say that, that there's different tribes in Africa that are descendants of Israelites, we also have to accept that we have brothers that went into the Middle East. We have brothers that went into Europe, right? We have brothers that even went as far as Asia, right?
Mhm.
And they intermixed, with people, and they took, women and converted them, and some of our women were raped and taken advantage of. And so we have to, I think one of the places where I disagree with the Israelite movement today, like I don't think Capstar Funia and the older guys, but I'm saying a lot of the camps today, is the isolation, like consciousness, like meaning like, okay, well, we're the only ones and we're by ourselves, right? And we're
Yeah,
going
no,
through this dynamic, right?
yeah,
So
I don't agree with that. I don't agree that we only went in 70 AD. So let me just say this because
yeah,
me and Rabbi Mordecai, we know the history. In 70 AD, the Israelites did not just go into West Africa. Luke 21 and 24 says we will be carried away into all nations. Now, the only thing that I will say is that the the Israelite communities that got scattered in other places, not all of them, but a lot of them held on to who they were. We do see a lot of Israelite communities in other parts of the diaspora. But as far as the West goes, we do see the Yoruba, the Ashanti, the Limba, a lot of these African tribes keeping their oral customs and traditions that they're Israelites. But a vast majority of us, especially those who got on the ships that came to America, they were completely destitute and stripped of who they are as a people, their self-knowledge. So that I would say that is also a key factor into why the Black American is so lost in the sauce about who they are ethnically and nationalistically.
yeah, no, and I definitely do, and like say for example, like the Igbos, right? So yeah, the Igbos, they're probably the most vigilant group of Jews, Israelites in Africa, the continent as a whole. I mean, even more so than even the Ethiopians that were on the east of Africa, right? The Beta Israel. And then you have on the east of Africa, you have Beta of Israel. More Central Africa, you have the Limba. You have them in like South Africa, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and then in the West, you like you said, you have the Igbos and the Falashi, all these different people. But the thing is, the challenge also in the North American context is the fact that like when we came to America, like we were like raped, tremendously, right? That's why we have like light-skinned Black people. Then we have the dynamic of us intermixing with American Indians, also with people that are Spanish descent. And a lot of people who are Spanish actually also have Israelite descent, are also connected in many ways too. And so, when we talk about this idea of like acclimating into the will of the Torah, right? That we have to take those things into an account because, a lot of movements have came in the past, in the African American community have acknowledged many of the points that we said, but they weren't able to sustain themselves, right? And they may have had like a first generation of people that were into it, but then after that, like Rabbi Matthews, the commandment keepers, right? And so the point that I would stress is this process of reacclimation into the collective.
So which tribes? I know we spoke about the Limba, the Igbo, Yoruba,
Beta Israel.
Beta Israel. So these are all African tribes, and that's not all of them, but these are just some of the main ones.
The popular ones. I got a lot of media.
Right, the popular ones. Which one of those tribes would you say most Black Americans come from? Igbo. Okay.
Yep.
So y'all heard it. And this isn't just our Rabbi Mordecai brother. PhD scholars agree with this. We're
the rabbis here in Israel, Ashkenaz rabbi, one of our greatest rabbis, Rabbi Chaim Kanetsky, they made a ruling here in Israel that the Igbos are Jews. They made a ruling on that. You know what I mean? So it's not like my own personal thing or Chief Rabbi Pinchas said it. This is something that's acknowledged. Now, the dynamic between them and the African American community, that has to be researched and brought out because it's been like really concealed from the African American community.
Right. Okay. So I will say this. I've heard this thing as well from Dr. Henry Abramson and then PhD Dr. Michael Brown. So you said that there's a official rabbi of Ashkenazim who declared that
one of the biggest in our generation. The two biggest rabbis in our generation here in Israel. One was Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, and he made the ruling, and he's a Sephardic rabbi. He made a ruling on the Ethiopian, the Beta Israel, and that's why they were able to come to Israel. And then the other rabbi, who's Ashkenaz, Rabbi Chaim Kanetsky in blessed memory, both in blessed memory, made a ruling on the Ebos, and that's
that they're bloodline Israelites.
Yeah, the Jews, they're Israelites. Yeah.
Okay, and for the record, everybody, according to the statistics, most Black Americans come from Igbo. Not all, but most come from Igbo. So what would that make y'all? According to history, archaeology, and prophecy, from Israelites, from secular, that would make y'all bloodline Israelites. Okay, my last question is, the curses. The Bible says in Deuteronomy 28:46, right? It says that the curses will be on the Israelites forever. It says, and they shall be upon thee for a sign, as in an indicator, and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So would you how do you interpret or understand this? Would you agree that the curses will be on the Israelites essentially until the Messiah came to redeem them?
The thing is saying that, like, that's a big point, right? Because you're talking about the Israelites as when we have, like, if I have one perspective and say, hey, I'm looking at the curse from my experience as a person who's a descendant of Ebos that came through the transatlantic slave trade, I could see it in a particular way. If I was from Europe, I could see it in a particular way. If I was from the Middle East, I could see it in a particular way. So it's not a one uniform thing, because when we talk about people not being redeemed, it's not just limited to, the people who, the Ebos that came, through the transatlantic slave trade, right? It's also people who were in Spain, right? People who've been expelled from, from Latin countries, people that were, in Europe and these type of things. And just because we see certain communities, like say, like, we see like people from Europe, like Ashkenaz Jews, and we may see like, oh, well, people are progressive and they have a culture, whatever, but their history has been removed from them as well. Like their identities also been removed. That's why Israel is such an important place to be, because you see people like saying like, oh, wait, that's not really who we are. This is who we are. But you would think on the outside that, oh, these people know this and they know that. No, they don't. That's not true. Even in Israel, when we want to understand marriage, like if two Jews want to get married, there's very little information to show. Like, there's certain things that we have, like maybe someone has parents had a Jewish wedding, with a ketubah, like a marriage document, or maybe like they were part of a synagogue, or maybe a relative was buried in a synagogue, in a Jewish cemetery, but it's still like a very ambiguous thing for everybody. It's not a clear point. Even in the beginning, I remember talking to the people in Dimona who were Israelites, and they were telling me when they first came in 1964 to Israel, that most of the people that they met did not have documentation, because everyone was just coming there, just showing up, right? They didn't have documentation because of the wars, because of the pogroms, because of all these things, right? So I think, when we analyze the Torah, we have to analyze it as from a collective, and also that everyone had unique experiences in diaspora, right?
Okay.
And yeah.
So which curses, are you familiar with the whole list of curses in Deuteronomy 28?
Yeah, like the boats, no one will redeem you, these types of things. Yeah.
So which curses, just off the top of the head, which curses would you say went on the Black Jews from Deuteronomy 28?
Jews, bro? Which ones?
Just let's just say the collective. So you said that we agree that the curses are a collective, right? Like it collectively affects. So when things like you'll be always oppressed.
Yeah.
So who would that? What is that in 32? Let me just go here. When it says, okay, you would become a proverb and a byword among all nations. 31. Okay, here we go. 29. And thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in the darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save you. So let's just take this one for example.
Yep.
The Israelites, one of the curses is you wouldn't prosper and you would always be oppressed and spoiled. So as far as who you know to be Israelites,
yep,
who would fit the bill right here?
So that's a great question, because like I get in these debates with like these pro-Palestinian supporters type of things, and one of the things they always throw out, you guys have been kicked out of over 100 and something countries, right? It says that, like, everyone else, Jews have been kicked out of every country that they've been in. Jews have been oppressed, and just because you may had a couple guys who may made some money, but they weren't connected to the Torah, like most of those people, right? And so if a Jew's not connected to the Torah, he's in bondage, he's in slavery, even if he has $100 million in the bank, right? So like Jews have been abused throughout the world. Jews in Latin America, Jews in Africa, Jews in Europe, Jews, everywhere there's Jews at, that they are always been oppressed. They've always been treated as second-class citizens, and suffered. I mean, like and it's not to say that there weren't moments where there could have been a moment where there was a certain moment of acceptance. Like, look at the Jews in America right now, right? Everyone's running around saying, "Get out of here! We hate Israel." This, blah blah blah. This whole thing. And and they're getting attacked. You see in Australia, right? This guy just comes, a group of people lighting a menorah, pow, 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 shooting up people in broad daylight, right? No one cares. No one cares in Australia. So it's just saying we see this all over the place, right? And so that it's like I said, we have to view everything from a collective experience to be able to really hone in on like what God is trying to show us, because we could see even the Igbos, like they're the most oppressed people in Africa, right? But still the most successful, they're still the smartest, they're still the most ambitious business-wise, but still they murder them in broad daylight, like there's been massacres against them, right? Mm-hmm. The Jews in the Holocaust, we know that's a famous story, right? The Jews.
What about this? What about the curse that says, this curse right here that says that the enemies will possess the land of Israel? It says, "And I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which dwell there shall be astonished at it." So if the curses are forever, and one of the curses, well, at least until the Messiah, until the kingdom comes, one of the curses is that enemies would have possession of the land of Israel. How does that play into Israel today?
I mean, look at it. Like when the destruction of the first, second temple, right? Who took over? The Romans took over, right? And then after the Romans, you had the Ottoman Empire took over that, right? After the Ottoman Empire, you had the Turks that took over, right? After the Turks took over, then you had
the Muslims, more Muslims.
The British, the British.
Oh, the British, yeah, the British.
Yeah, the British took over. So
who controls the land of Israel today?
Who controls the land today is you could say like maybe like
America. Israelites, or is it Goy?
The non-Jews control Israel. There's Jews living here, but it's not like
the Goy controls Israel.
Yeah, America controls Israel.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Jews here, there's Jews doing things, but at the end of the day, the Jews are subservient to America. I mean, America says don't do this, don't do that, and we don't do it. You know what I mean? Because America is still like the ASOP is still in control. But that as
but here's the problem. Here's the problem with that though. It says your enemies that dwell there. So America is over in America. This curse is saying that there's going to be enemies dwelling and occupying the land. This is that curse. So how does that play out today in Israel?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like when we're saying dwelling there, we're saying that the institutions here, the military, all these things. Like if you look at like a weapon, many of the weapons that you see the idea of have, it says made in America and owned by America. You know what I mean? And so it's like, even though yes, there's Jews here and they're fighting and these type of things, but it's still not the case. And you still have many people who, like, you have the Arabs here, not all of them, but a lot of the Arabs here are dwelling in the land, and they have a tremendous control and power here too, right? You have countries like Qatar, you have all these terrorists that are attacking Jews all the time. I mean, they're here, they're next door. Like Gaza's two hours away from where I'm at. Lebanon.
So you're saying that Israel does not have sovereignty and autonomy?
No.
Okay.
Not until Mashiach comes is when the whole system changes.
Okay. Pardon the brief interruption. This is something that I wanted to mention to our brother Rabbi Mordecai. It says the enemies would dwell in the land. He said that was America. America is not an enemy to Israel, rather an ally. And the reason why I was asking our brother this is because although he believes that we are authentic Israelites by blood, he also believes the people in the land today of Israel are authentic as well. And so what I was doing was trying to see how they fit into the prophetic curses that would be upon the seed of Israel. Let's continue. But as far as who got it the worst and continuously until this day, it's not negating who you may believe to be Israel, but as far as the curses of Deuteronomy 28, the Black experience to this day, would you say the curses are affecting them more so than other people groups that claim to be descendants of Israel?
I would say, like, African Americans have definitely suffered a tremendous point. But the thing is, it's like when you look at like the idea of like just using the term colonialization, right? When you look at the world over the last 1,000 years, just at that last 1,000, not just 2,000, just the last 1,000, most people on planet Earth have been conquered and renamed, right? Most people. But the last group of people that we could say that really experienced this was the African American, right? That came in the transatlantic slave trade. Now, from that, you can argue spiritually, we're in a better position than most of our other brothers, right? Because our other brothers were able to somehow, in some ways, assimilate into societies. Like the Jews that went to Latin America. If you meet Jews from Latin America, they look Hispanic. You know what I'm saying? They look Mexican. They look this. Jews that went into Europe, they look European. They're white passing. Jews that went into Persia, they look Persian. Iraq, they look Iraqi. Us, we're completely autonomous, right? And we don't look like anybody, right? We weren't allowed to assimilate, right? There was laws against interracial marriage up until a few decades ago. So by us, it may seem like it's hard, but spiritually, it's easy for us to say, well, the whole concept of being Black, that was created by our oppressors, right? Colored, Negro, all these things, these were created by our oppressors. So when we talk about the redefinition of the human being from the soul perspective, right? Not the Roman Greek perspective, but from the Jewish, the Israel perspective, you could say like, no, we're actually in a better place because it's easier to shed those cloaks of falsity, right? And to be like many of the Jews in America got sucked into whiteness, right? And then all of a sudden now the white people are saying like, no, y'all got to go. Right, you're not a part of us. So in many ways, spiritually, now maybe on a communal level, other people were able to blend in easier, right? But by us, we're in a better position spiritually because we can say, hey, you know what? I can let go of the white man's, philosophy about who I am and attach myself to God's philosophy as it relates to my soul, right? Not my external expression, right? That's what they want to limit me to. But no, I'm a soul, and my soul came through this pain and suffering because of the greatness of my neshama.
Yeah. Well, it's been a fun time. I hope everybody enjoyed it. TGC Ministries in the building. Rabbi Mordecai in the building. Many more conversations to go. Maybe he can link us up with other rabbis in Israel and Jerusalem to have these conversations to bridge the gaps and build on commonalities, man. I appreciate you. All right. We're going to say peace, blessings to everybody, and shalom.
Love you guys. All the best.